So I'm starting the year off really easy with the Tilly and the Buttons Coco. I've made this pattern 5 times, 3 times as a dress, once as a t-shirt and once as a jumper. So I could basically do this with my eyes closed now, which is what I need in January. I'm using this black and white jersey and I've had it all cut out, and the next thing I need to do is add the stay stitching to the neckline and stabilise the shoulders, which I'm going to do with this burgundy ribbon.
So the first thing I did on my Coco was to stay stitch the neck edge. This is extra important on stretch fabrics as this area can easily warp and then your neckline won't sit flat. I've got my machine fitted here with a walking foot and jersey needle. The next thing is reinforcing the shoulder seams. I'm sewing a narrow burgundy ribbon just above where the shoulder seam will be, and this keeps the area neat and stable during sewing, washing and wearing. Then I sew the shoulder seams together, press, and trim the excess to avoid bulk. Now is the best time to finish the neckline, as this becomes more fiddly once the sleeves have been added. I turn the neckline over to just under the stay stitching and press in place. Once this is pressed, I add double-sided fabric tape. This means that the fabric will stay in place no matter what, unlike using pins with jersey fabric where they can sometimes move around, and it doesn't gunk up the sewing needle despite how sticky it is. I love this trick, it makes sewing the neckline so much easier. I've changed to a twin needle for the neckline for a neat and professional looking finish. Now to insert the sleeves. Flat sleeve insertion is my favourite method. I find it much easier to work with it as it all seems much clearer. I always sew first on my regular machine before overlocking because I'm scared of cutting off too much or too little. It may seem like overkill, but I don't need to add stress to my sewing projects. Once the sleeves are in, the side seam is sewn in one line. I always leave my overlocker threads long and then use a tapestry needle to tuck the ends into the seam. This prevents the overlocking from unravelling. The last thing to do is to hem the body and sleeves. The instructions for the Coco top involve leaving part of the side seam open at the hem, which I have done before on a jumper weight and liked, but I prefer to sew the hem closed on a lightweight jersey top like this. And here's my finished top, a definite wardrobe staple and perfect to tuck into skirts to dress it up, or dress it down by leaving untucked with some slacks. A boat neck is one of my favourite necklines, it's super flattering.
So the next thing I'm making this month is a Simplicity 8229 Madeline collaboration high-waisted pants, high-waisted knickers, which are on my 2021 Make 9 because I wanted to have a more practical, everyday theme rather than things that I only wear a couple of times. So I'm using this navy-based jersey covered in dinosaurs and bones. So I got this from DIY or Die, which is an independent fabric and haberdashery and sewing pattern retailer online, and I really recommend them. So I'm going to use this, and I've got some red lace that I bought there as well to match this red because it's such a navy. I didn't want to get black lace, I didn't want to try and get a matching navy in case it was the wrong navy, so I just thought contrast red, fabulous. So I'm making 2 pairs. I'm making a pair for me and a pair for my fiance Nick, and we're going to look really cute in these matching pants.
The starting stitches on the knickers is to sew the main pieces and lining piece together at the gusset seam. I did this on the overlocker, although it could just as easily be done with a zigzag stitch. The next step was to sew the side seams, and then they already looked like a pair of underwear, so much easier than I expected. Next I added the red lace trim. This is sewn right sides together at the waistband and leg openings with a zigzag. I'm still using my walking foot and ballpoint needle for this jersey fabric, which made things much easier. The lace is then turned over and top stitched down with a zigzag. I found this to be the most difficult part as I needed to stretch the jersey slightly and zigzag at the same time. I used a contrasting red thread to match the lace. I originally intended to use a twin needle, but this did not go as planned. And here they are, a pair of dinosaur knickers. I love the shape of them so much as high-waisted underwear is super comfy. Next time I may make the leg line slightly higher to be more flattering. I was unsure what the leg line was intended to be as I can't find any official photos of these worn. This is what they look like on the inside. I think they look fairly professional. This was my first time working with elastic lace trim, so it was definitely a learning experience. Next time I'll probably lengthen the gusset lining a fair amount, as I would prefer it to finish much higher.
So this is another project that comes from my Make 9 for this year. It's the Simplicity 4548, and I've made the trousers twice, and I've made them into shorts. And I love the trousers, but I'm going to make the blouse. I'm making the blouse for a set of pyjamas from this fabric, which I've had for years. I made Nick a dress from this, and I accidentally bought like 4 meters too much. I think because it was very narrow, I was very worried about not having enough. So I went a bit loopy and bought loads of it. And now I've got probably enough to make this pair of pyjamas. Hopefully enough, we'll see. So I'm making, yes, this is going to be the top, and I will probably get halfway through this month and then continue in February. So we'll see where we are with this at the end of the month.
I started the pyjama top by stay stitching the neckline. I also stay stitched the armhole, which I would never normally do, but as I have never used this pattern before, I knew the sewing process may take longer than intended if there were any fit issues, and I didn't want the armhole to stretch in this time. The next step was to sew the darts in place. I transferred these markings from the pattern with chalk paper and a tracing wheel, which is my preferred method as I'm not keen on tailor's tacks. These are sewn to the end and then knotted rather than backstitched to prevent misshaping the dart. Next are the shoulder seams, and I sewed the side seams on a long length stitch as I knew I needed to unpick the stitching after the first fitting.
So I've got to a fitting point on my pyjama top, and I think it's okay. Like, I don't want it to be any tighter than this or looser than this, and I want to be able to get to a point where I could use this just as a blouse as well as a pyjama button-up top. So I'm fitting up to here, even though with the pyjamas I probably won't even put a button at the top. I'll just leave it as an open neck, because otherwise I'll wake up in the night being choked by it. So yeah, I think the fit around the neck is fine, if a little close, but like I'd probably wear a brooch up here anyway and get the strangle feeling, so that's just life. I'm going to move, so I'm going to, if I just take that pin off, so the top button point that is on the pattern is, I would say, a little high as well, so when I'm wearing this pyjama top it's just like a bit of a nothing position. It's not high, it's not low, it's just the. So I'm going to take it down to probably here. I know it's only slightly different, but I think that's enough that it will be a better neckline, and then I'll just reposition these buttons. I think I'm going to move this one slightly up because it is slightly tight across the hips, and I don't really think that matters because I'm going to move the button up and then it will sort of slightly splay out, which I don't really care. So
Now that the fit is confirmed, I felt confident to overlock the edge of the groin on facing and top stitch this area down neatly. I also overlocked the shoulder seams and pressed to the back. The next thing was to construct the collar. I've already interfaced the front of the collar with a lightweight fusing. Once this was sewn together, I clipped the corners and pressed it as neatly as possible. I can never find a balance between perfectly pointy collars and accidentally making a small hole by clipping too closely or using something too sharp to try to turn it with. The last thing I was able to do before the end of the month was attach the collar to the neckline. If you also have this pattern, I would recommend cutting the collar slightly smaller, as there was just too much ease and I found it really frustrating to try and get it all together. I broke my needle sewing this collar as I pin horizontally whenever possible and I'm too lazy to whip out the pins as I'm sewing. Oops! So on the 1st of February, this is where the blouse stands. I want it to be about halfway through, and I'd say it's more like a third, to be honest. I need to finish the collar area, insert the sleeves, attach the cuffs, add the buttons and buttonholes, and then hem the whole thing. Thanks so much for watching. See you next month with another update.